Hi, I'm Congresswoman Terry Sewell, and I'd like to welcome you to our very first virtual grants workshop of 2022. Today's workshop will focus on the grant opportunities available to our counties, cities, and water utility agencies to improve wastewater and drinking water infrastructure in Alabama's 7th Congressional District. As we know, the COVID-19 pandemic has laid bare the systemic disinvestments our nation has made in vital systems such as healthcare and infrastructure. Unfortunately, for the small towns and cities in our district, the long-term effects of disinvestment have left our communities and vulnerable systems completely broken and in dire need of help. For the Black Belt, long before the spread of COVID-19, there has been a dire health and sanitation issue. According to a UN report published in 2011, 40 to 90% of households in Lowndes County had inadequate or no septic system. The UN also stated that 50% of the conventional on-site septic systems were failing or were expected to fail in the future. The report also found that 80% of residents in the Black Belt did not have the option to connect to a municipal water system, forcing them to provide their own waste disposal by piping their wastewater and sewage in a short distance from their house, usually in their environment. Since my time in Congress, I have worked diligently to provide millions of dollars in funding and resources to improve water infrastructure in Alabama's 7th Congressional District. As the only member of the Alabama delegation to vote in favor of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, I am proud to report that at least $782 million is on its way to Alabama to modernize our water infrastructure. I am so excited to be hosting today's workshop to ensure that local city and county governments and water utility agencies in my district are informed about the many resources available to them so that our communities can access those resources that are so sorely needed. Joining us today are three esteemed guests who will present information about the grant opportunities available through their respective agencies. Chris Thomas, the Chief of the Permitting and Grant Branch at the United States Environmental Protection Agency. Eric Reedy, Chief Environmental Engineer with the Alabama Department of Environmental Services State Revolving Fund. And finally, Ivory Gordon Jr., State Director of the Alabama Office of Rural Development for the United States Department of Agriculture, and Alan Boyd, Director of Community Programs for Alabama's USDA Rural Development. I want to thank all of you for being here today, and with that, I will kick it over to our first guest, Chris Thomas.
Thank you, Congresswoman, for inviting EPA to be here. This is a very important event, and it's a very important time for EPA. We're very excited to be able to communicate the opportunities that are in the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. That's the funds that are coming down through the state revolving funds that are administered by our states and our region and by ADEM in Alabama. My contact information is here on this slide, and if you need to get in touch with me, you can do that. There's my email address, and so let's get going here. Next slide, please. The Bipartisan Infrastructure Law goes by several names. It originally started out as the Infrastructure and Investment in Jobs Act. It was called IEJA, and we were all afraid that we were going to have to say IEJA for the rest of our careers. But then we called it for a little while the Bipartisan Infrastructure Deal, but now it's called the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, or Bill. So when you hear us referring to Bill, we're talking about the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. Bill did a couple of really important things. It amended the Safe Drinking Water Act and the Clean Water Act, Clean Water, or the SRFs, the state revolving funds. So it reauthorized those, but it also added some significant new appropriations of money to the drinking water and clean water SRFs for the next 5 years. Next slide, please. The bill, as I said, it reauthorized the existing base SRF programs and added additional funds for the next 5 years. So from FY22 through FY26, we'll be implementing the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. Next slide, please. Some of the things for the clean water SRF that Bill did that were really significant is it reauthorized the program at much higher funding levels than what we've had in the past. You can see below the orange bar at the top, the FY22 for this year nationally, there was going to be $2.4 billion appropriated. Just for comparison's sake, the FY21 appropriation was $1.6 billion. So you can see a significant increase in the base program. And as you look across that line, you can see that the funding levels go up over the next 5 years. The other thing that it did that's really significant is that it expanded the allowable forms of subsidization through grants, negative interest rates, loan forgiveness. It includes provisions for refinancing and restructuring debt for municipalities. And so there's a big emphasis in Bill and then the future parts that I'll communicate to you about subsidization. It includes a floor of not less than 10%, but not more than 30% for additional subsidies. And in the Clean Water SRF, we're really excited about a new set aside that's available to states that allows them to take 2% of the capitalization grant that we give to the state that they in turn loan to people, that to allow them to do some technical assistance and outreach to entities for rural and small and tribally publicly owned treatment works or sewage treatment plants for municipalities. It also added the Buy America, Build America procurement requirements that I'll go into in a little bit later in the presentation. Next slide, please. In the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, you can see again the funding levels that the bill provided. FY22, we're up to $2.4 billion. Just for reference, the FY21 appropriation was $1.95 billion. So you can see an increase there. And again, as you move into the out years, there's going to be even more money, all the way up to $3.25 billion nationally. And again, it expands the allowable forms of subsidy, it emphasizes or requires the Build America, Buy America procurement requirement. And you're going to hear that referred to as BABA, which so we're not playing the game of what sound does a sheep make, but it is really when we say BABA, we're referring to Build America, Buy America. Next slide. Okay, and this is really getting into the exciting part. Bill added 3 pots of supplemental SRF funds for the next 5 years. It not only authorized it, but it appropriated these funds. There's a general supplemental pot for both the clean water and the drinking water SRF. There is a lead service line supplemental pot of money to deal with the lead service lines and lead in drinking water. And then there's also another pot of money for both the clean water and the drink water SRFs to deal with emerging contaminants. And a big focus of emerging contaminants is the PFOA and PFOS. So we're really excited to have some money dedicated to deal with these emerging contaminants. Next slide, please. Just going to talk real quick about each of these pots of money. The general supplemental pot for the clean water and the drink water SRF It's really more money to do what the base programs do. The match requirements for the states in FY22 and 23 were at 10%, and it returns to the traditional 20% in the out years. But the really exciting part of this for us is that 49% of the capitalization grant in this pot of money must be given as additional subsidy, and the additional subsidies are going to disadvantaged communities. And so that's really important. You know, one of the big themes that you're going to hear from EPA and that you'll hear, you know, through ADEM is that we're trying to, through these subsidies, allow municipalities who may not have been able to participate in the traditional base SRF programs that are disadvantaged to be able to reach fund, to get a hold of funding to do the water and wastewater infrastructure needs that they have. So that's we're really looking forward to that getting rolled out. The second pot of money is a lead service line supplemental pot. It's it's anybody that's eligible for the SRF as far as their project goes, but it's for projects specifically associated with removing lead service lines and lead in drinking water. It includes identification, planning, design, and replacement of lead service lines. There was no state match requirement for this pot of money, and also, again, 49% of this capitalization grant that we're given to the states for this must be given as additional subsidy. Next slide, please. The last pot of money, again, is to help us deal with emerging contaminants. There was no state match for this, and 100% of this capitalization grant must be used as additional subsidy. So while traditionally the amount of subsidization in the base programs, has been set to a fixed range, the amount of subsidization that's going to go out, and when I say subsidization, I'm talking about grants or loan amounts that will not have to be paid back. Next slide. Just to give you some perspective on the amounts of money, these are national numbers. Again, you can see for the clean water SRF and the drink water SRF in the bill supplemental pot, starts off, in year FY22, which is the one we're in, $1.9 billion, going all the way up to $2.6 billion in FY26 for the clean water, and 1.9 for the drinking water, all the way up to 2.6 for the drinking water in FY26. Again, you can see what the state match requirements are and the additional subsidy. Next slide. Same kind of information for the lead service line pot of money. Again, these were zero state match, which really helps the states out. But then this 49% subsidization on these amounts will help a lot of disadvantaged systems that need this kind of help to deal with lead service lines. Next slide. And again, for the emerging contaminants, these are the funding amounts. This pot of money is a little bit smaller, but it's a little bit more specific to dealing with emerging contaminants. And all of these funds are required to go out in the form of subsidies to municipalities. Next slide, please. Okay, BABA, Build America, Buy America Act. It is included in the bill, and it is really an expansion of the concept of the American Iron and Steel. It requires the domestic, or it requires both of the state revolving funds as well as WIFIA, which is a loan program administered by headquarters, to use products in the construction of these projects that are made in America. And so that's it's a big job creation provision in bill to help with American jobs. And again, it's going to require the domestic production of iron and steel, manufactured products, and other construction materials associated with these projects. Next slide. This is really a generational investment in clean and safe drinking water. The bill represents the largest single investment the federal government has ever made in water infrastructure. For a long time, we've been hearing, the states and municipalities and the EPA has been communicating the need to deal with a lot of aging infrastructure. And these funds are going to give us the opportunities to do that. And again, the subsidization requirements that are built in bill are going to ensure that a large, the 49% of these funds are going to be given to disadvantaged communities to help them with their infrastructure. Next slide. The kind of where we are with things right now. Last week, headquarters released the implementation documents to the states and to the regions on kind of how this money is going to processes and procedures and the details about how this money is going to get worked by EPA in the states as we get it out the door and out to the municipalities. There's a big emphasis on targeting resources on disadvantaged and underserved communities. You're going to see a lot of outreach, which is part of why I'm here today, is to try to communicate to people the opportunities that exist with the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law funds. And so you're going to see a lot of communication from ADEM and from other states, from EPA. And there's also going to be some technical assistance that EPA is putting together to assist states and municipalities in putting together the necessary paperwork to get these projects in play in your locality. And really, it's going to require EPA and the states to work together, which we always do. Each state's going to have a little bit of a different approach based on the needs and kind of how things work in their state. We've been having a lot of conversations with ADEM and the other 7 states in the EPA Region 4. And there's a lot of really good thinking going on, and everybody's really excited to get this money in play. And so states are working on their intended use plans, working with the projects, working with their municipalities, and we're looking forward to getting the grant applications so we can get the money out the door and out to the states. Next slide. Okay, I've been talking kind of big picture from the national standpoint. I know you're probably more interested in what's going on in Alabama. For FY22, the allocation for bill is the total funds in the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act is $137,133,000. You can see how it's divided up across the pots of money that I spoke to, and this does not include the base program funding that we just got with the federal fiscal year budget that was passed, I think yesterday, or passed this week on the 16th of March. But just for perspective, last year for FY21, the total SRF allotment that Alabama received for both the clean water and drink water SRFs was about $41.48 million. So you can see the levels of funding that's coming through because of bill that's on top of the base funding. It's significant, and so there's a lot of money out there. There's going to be a lot of opportunities for municipalities to get funds for their water and wastewater infrastructure needs. Next slide. Okay, so what are the eligible types of projects for the clean water SRF and your wastewater treatment plants? The first three bullets here typically take the lion's share of the projects that states get for the clean water SRF. Building, repairing the wastewater treatment plants for the publicly owned treatment works, which is what POTW is an acronym for. Alabama does not have any combined sewer, so y'all are blessed by that not being part of what you have to deal with. But also the collection system work for infiltration and inflow rehab, where stormwater is getting into the collection systems, creating a lot of extra treatment at the treatment plants. And then energy conservation, climate resiliency, and hazard mitigation. There's a lot of different things that can be done with clean water SRF. Next slide, please. The drinking water SRF, the eligible project categories, again, treatment, transmission and distribution, storage, source water protection, again, climate resiliency and hazard mitigation, planning and design. There's a lot of possible projects for the drinking water SRF as well. Okay, in the last slide I've got, as you've heard me say several times, that ADEM is the implementing entity for the state revolving fund in Alabama. Brian Espy, who's the chief of the General Services branch at ADEM, is the manager over these drinking water and clean water SRFs, and his contact information is there. And he's asked that all of the email inquiries go to this email address. So with that, I conclude my presentation. And again, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you, Chris, for your presentation and for the critical information that you've shared. If you have any questions for Chris, be sure to leave a comment below, and someone from our office will reach out to assist you. Next, I'd like to welcome Eric Reedy with the Alabama Department of Environmental Services State Revolving Fund. Thank you so much for being here, Eric.
Thank you, Congresswoman, for having us. It's an honor to be here. My name is Eric Reedy. I'm the chief of the SRF section here at ADEM. And we'll start with kind of just a general overview. I know, and I appreciate also, Chris, thank you for your presentation. That actually had a lot of the information that I have. I'll attempt to not repeat as much as I can, but we're going to go into the specifics of Alabama and how the national program has kind of affected us and the funds it's given. So as our base program is still there. So as we see on this slide, we kind of have the state revolving fund and then that additional funding opportunities that Chris had mentioned, including the BIL as well as ARPA, which I'll go into as well in later slides. But I do want to reiterate, we talk a lot, and Chris hit on this a good bit with grant funding and additional subsidization. First and foremost, the state revolving fund is still a loan program. So we give out loans to public entities to address water infrastructure. And so the details of the loans are there a low interest rate and a 20-year fixed rate. So I put that 20-year specifically because Alabama law requires us to go to 20. So you'll see some other programs that maybe can go a little longer, maybe even a little shorter, but we are mandated by Alabama law to do that 20 years. So keep that in mind as well. Now, the 1.99%, last year it was 2.2. So we're excited to announce that we've dropped it a good bit. And we really hope to bring in as many communities this year as we possibly can, not just in the additional programs, but also SRF. And of course, as Chris mentioned as well, there is a possibility we do additional subsidization only in the form of principal forgiveness. So you'll hear me kind of talk about that exclusively, but those words go hand in hand. Additional subsidization, that equals principal forgiveness in our eyes. Okay. So again, like we mentioned, we also have the BIL and the ARPA. I'll first kind of go over our base program. And so the state revolving fund in general, it's been around for clean water about 30 years and then about 20 years for drinking water. And in total, we've done over 2.2 billion. And that is just a huge number that we are very proud of. And obviously, we hope to continue to have those numbers rise and help as many communities in this state as we possibly can. So just to give you an idea, and I know Chris kind of gave these numbers as well, in 2022, we're allocated 17 million and 20 million for clean water and drinking water, respectively. And as you see, our program demand, I mean, it can get up to 100 million. And that average is an average over the past 5 years, and it's about 60 million, right? So with just being allocated from the federal pot of 17 million and 20 million, we make up the rest of that with state funds. And as the name implies, state revolving fund, all the payments we get back from loans we make go right back into our pot of money. So not only do we have that federal allocation, we also have our state portion, and that can make up enough that we're able to fund hundreds of millions in certain years, which is just fantastic. So again, Chris hit this a lot. I put this up just to kind of say, look at how many, projects are eligible. Okay. Really, there's not much that isn't. And I'll kind of go over the ineligible projects. I think that's a better list to kind of give you an idea. And I know I even put the CSO control systems over there, just kind of giving out. But as Chris noted, we don't have any of those. But this is from the eligibility handbook from EPA. And I would strongly recommend, if you have any questions or if you have a project, they're easy to find. I didn't put the link because they obviously wouldn't be clickable, I don't think. But just if you search for eligibility handbook for SRF from EPA, it's a draft document. But again, it's just got a lot of good guidance in there. And again, drinking water projects, same thing, just pulled those from the eligibility handbook. One thing I like to point out here is I think most people it's intuitive for treatment, transmission and distribution, source, storage, all those kind of make sense, right? But also keep in mind, I mean, a lot of these are kind of in the middle of nowhere, like storage tanks, or they're in very high traffic areas. So things like security, fencing, say you got to, do construction that you have to take down fencing, all of that can be included. So we kind of try to, again, get the whole project as long as it's eligible. We can definitely handle that kind of thing. So keep that in mind. You don't have to kind of parse it out depending on, if it's specific to that, call us if you have any questions from there. And again, stuff like SCADA, things like that are very important to systems, and they can definitely be funded with these funds. So there's another category of projects that I really want to hit too. And Green Project Reserve is really for energy efficiency, environmentally innovative projects, water efficiency. So not only is this promoting kind of environmental consciousness, we think also this is kind of fiscal sustainability. So things like water meters, you can have 10, 20% water loss. Fixes to water meters helps revenue. Not only that loss of water, but, you're gaining that revenue back. So those are very important. They seem kind of small in the grand scheme of things, but we really try to hit those hard. That's a very popular project, especially for some smaller towns. And again, energy efficiency, every time you essentially replace pumps, the efficiency just keeps getting better. So you get credit for that. That's a good thing. And just to note, green projects are eligible for principal forgiveness in the clean water program. We do usually give one project that's green, some additional principal forgiveness. But more than that, in drinking water and clean water, green projects give you an additional project ranking. So you can rank higher by promoting these projects. So we really like these projects. And of course, it's a requirement. We have to do 10% of both programs for green projects. However, we have no problem meeting that. Again, we kind of promote these for that sustainability portion of it. So definitely, if you have green projects, that's something we're definitely interested in funding and very excited to get in-house. All right, so here's my list of ineligible projects. I think this one's a lot better. And the one I forgot, which I saw Chris mention on his slides, was operation and maintenance. That's another big one. Obviously, the only one here that's not intention-based is that building plumbing. So keep in mind, we really do in-the-ground infrastructure. So community centers, schools, private homes, all that work is up to the meter. okay? Just to kind of give you an idea of what we're funding. So the two here that kind of go hand in hand is primary goal is growth and industrial expansion, all right? And that kind of tells you what kind of projects we're looking for. We're looking for critical needs, replacements, not upgrades, right? And so if you have a system that you're gaining revenue by getting industrial expansion or say a new residential neighborhood, that's not something that we'll be able to fund. Okay, we're looking to fix existing issues, especially those that are maybe coming compliance problems or things like that. Those are definitely highly ranked. And as I mentioned on the first slide, Alabama is by law, we can only give these funds to public entities. So private entities are not eligible for SRF funding. All right, and so to get into the specifics of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, so it's a 5-year program, and I want to make it clear we get an annual appropriation. So if you feel like you maybe missed out on this year or even you're not ready next year or something, every year we kind of start the process over. So don't feel like you have to rush in this year and that'll get you for the next, feel free to wait till next year. If you're not ready for a few years, again, whenever you're ready, you can come in and for the next 5 years, we'll get that appropriation. All right. And again, as Chris mentioned, there's 3 separate pots of money. We got the SRF eligible projects, lead service line, and then emerging contaminants, which we'll go into a little bit of detail. All right. So just for our basic SRF eligible. So in addition to that 20 million and 17 million we got on the first slide in our base SRF program, the additional supplemental appropriation of 39 million for drinking water and 20 million for clean water, that also has additional principal forgiveness. So just to give you an idea, we're anywhere between like 20 to 30% on our regular SRF principal forgiveness. It ups it to 49%. And so in the past, we've also limited principal forgiveness to 500,000 or half the project, whichever is less. Just to be realistic, with that amount of principal forgiveness, we had to change that. So as I put here, I've got a couple listings in the next few slides, minimum for all projects. So that 49% is out of the total pot. And then individual projects can have anywhere from 5 to 100% based on the current language in the rule. All right. So the expectation is you'll get somewhere in there depending on how you rank, which I'll go over just a little bit as well. So the lead service line replacement. So again, this is specifically for that pot of money. We can't take this and use it for eligible projects. So if you have a lead service line replacement, this is definitely a good time to get in and get this money to get that project done. So for 2022, 16 million, again, 49. And then again, a project can have up to 100%. But the thing I want to note here is keep in mind, lead service line doesn't just mean the entire, hey, all of my lines are lead, right? You could have lead joints, lead components, goosenecks. And then also keep in mind, they mentioned galvanized piping downstream of lead lines, which can absorb some of that lead as well. So there's kind of a big umbrella of projects there. So definitely, if you think you have one of those projects, reach out to us. We'd be glad to help you. All right, and then emerging contaminants. Now, this one is your perfluoro and polyfluoroalkyl compounds, PFOA and PFOS. And again, we get drinking water and clean water for this one. Now, keep in mind that 1 million, it will go up to about 4 million over the next 4 years. So we do get a little bit more in the next couple appropriations. And then this is 100% principal forgiveness. So we can call this one a grant. And again, that's a great opportunity for anyone addressing those compounds within their drinking water or clean water system. And finally, and this is one that Chris didn't really mention, we had an appropriation from the state. And this one, we've kind of done our homework up front. And in order to kind of get this money to begin with, we had to essentially show need. So a lot of these, I hope that people have already been in contact with you to talk about ARPA. Now, until the dust settles and we have all applications, we do not know the total amount we're going to give. But the problem is, and on that right-hand side, the timeline. Okay, we have to have funds obligated by the end of 2024 and spent by 2026, which is why this one's kind of been expedited and why we've done that work on the front end. So if you're interested in this, our deadline this year is April 1st. Again, until we have all the applications in, I can't tell you, who's going to be eligible, what ranking. So, feel free, apply, and you can always withdraw with no obligation if you don't get what you want. All right. So that's really it. That was the main part of the program. So now, if you're interested, how do you apply? How do we reach out to you? I wanted to mention here, because obviously with so many different programs this year, we've had to kind of change. Our deadline is generally February 1st. And I think we've changed it 2 or 3 times this year just because of the overwhelming amount, because of the new programs. And so all I'm going to say is we constantly reach out and say, here's what's changing, here's what's coming, reach out to us at this. So please, if you think you should be getting those emails, those letters, reach out to us and let's get you on the list, because we definitely send it to as many possible people as we can. We work with our enforcement section just to find people who need this money. Okay. Again, we're looking at the most critical need, those disadvantaged communities. Now, one thing I like to clear up too is we always say applications are accepted year round, but wait, I just told you there was a deadline. Like, what does that mean, right? So principal forgiveness eligibility is the deadline. If we have the money and time is important to you, you're not necessarily looking for that principal forgiveness, then we can fund it anytime throughout the year. But unfortunately, because we have to meet certain percentages with the principal forgiveness, we have to kind of do that up front. So again, pay attention, because the deadlines have been moving a little bit. Just look for those notifications to make sure you get on time and get a chance to get that principal forgiveness. So the other thing we do is a workshop, and I don't go into a lot of detail on things like BABA, like Chris mentioned, but we do during the workshops, and we invite anyone who's interested. So if that's something you're interested in too, there's contact information at the end of this slide. Please reach out. We'd be happy to have you, and you can join us for either the spring or the winter workshop, depending on what you're looking for. The winter is generally kind of pre-app oriented, because we're getting ready to get to the due date, and then the spring will be more toward once you're funded, guidance documents, your American Iron Steel, that kind of thing. All right, and how do you apply? So you're interested, you have an eligible project. All you have to do is go to adm.alabama.gov. Under ADM forms, there's the Clean Water SRF pre-app, Form 340, and then Form 370 for the Drinking Water SRF pre-app. In addition to our form, you have to have a preliminary engineering report, which just should describe the details of the project, including the budget, that sort of thing, and then 3 years of financial audits. All right. And I don't want to dissuade those who may be struggling with audits or maybe are working on them. You can still apply. It just give us an idea of when those audits will be done, and it could affect your funding position, because if someone else is equal with you, all things considered, and they have their audits, that could jump ahead of you. But again, you still have a possibility. So I definitely don't want to dissuade you if that's something that you're working on or something like that. Reach out to us. We can be flexible and help you, and again, give you an idea of kind of the demand of the year and what we can do. Okay. And so once you apply, here's kind of the process we do. So what we call fundability, all right? And that is the first ranking. You can kind of think of the pre-app, you're applying for funding. The application, you're applying for environmental review and financial review, okay? So the pre-app is the first step where we say, yes, your project is eligible. We rank that project, you're ranked, and then we send you a fundability letter. Now, I also threw in the principal forgiveness ranking, which is our disadvantage metric, which I'll go over in the next slide. But that is kind of after we determine you're fundable. We don't essentially rank you until we find out you're fundable, obviously. And then I also want to hit this too with the different programs. Just make sure, you are understanding of what you are getting. You can get a loan, you could get 100% principal forgiveness, or a combination of the both. So just make sure, in that fundability letter, that should be clear. And if it's not, again, reach out to us. We'll be happy to clarify that for you. And so this is our disadvantage metric, okay? How we determine our principal forgiveness allocation. And, we try not to make it too much more complicated than we have in the past. So our existing SRF program for drinking water is essentially affordability, and that is the average annual household water bill normalized to 5,000 gallons. We divide that by the median household income of the service area, and that gives us a ratio. The higher the ratio, the more disadvantaged the community and the more principal forgiveness they'll be eligible for, okay? Clean water, it's a little more complicated because the sewer systems and like stormwater projects aren't necessarily part of a bill. And so what we do here is we take the census data of the service area, and that includes unemployment rate, poverty rate, median household income, population growth, and we compare that to the state average, and then again get kind of an algorithm type ratio there and compare in the highest numbers of the disadvantaged communities. And then we publish that in our intended use plan every year. And then once we publish our intended use plan, we're able to gather applications, review them, and then start closing. Okay. So the application process is essentially the environmental and financial review portion. Okay. So once you find out you're fundable, then you have to submit an application to make sure the environmental is, we agree with the environmental assessment and the financial review. Now, here is another caveat. Okay. The financial review, we require 1.1 times coverage for an SRF loan. And I put that specifically. It's hard to tell before you apply. You could say you have a certain threshold, right? And this is how I can meet 1.1. What I want to do here is, again, not dissuade people who may not meet that, because we take into account the principal forgiveness portion when calculating that. So if you have a $2 million project and you're getting $1.5 million in PF, well, 500,000 is what we use to evaluate that. So again, if it's something you're interested in and maybe you don't quite meet those, reach out to us and see if we can help you, see what we can do. And again, we'll be happy to help you through that process. A lot of the common questions I get are, how long is this going to take? And I think that's a fair question. Generally, in the past, our reviews are completed within 60 days. I would probably push that up 60 to 90 now that we have all these additional programs. It's just quite a bigger demand on us. But still, our goal is to get them out as quick as possible so that time isn't wasting for you. Obviously, time is money to most people, and especially with these projects. You can assume, I don't recommend this, but it is an option. Obviously, if you're submitting the pre-application and the application together, you don't know if you're funded yet. So we may send you a fundability letter saying, well, you didn't get funded, and then you've spent the time on that application. But if you're in a hurry, it is possible you can expedite the review, you can submit them together, and that way we can start reviewing the application at the same time. That is completely up to you. That's a judgment call based on what you guys are looking for. And then the 60-day to 90 does include a 30-day public notice for the environmental review, and then a 3 to 6 weeks like loan closure period while they're working on the paperwork, getting everything signed and close the loan. And I like to put this as well, and I like to kind of say all of our requirements fit on one page. Now, that's not quite practical. This isn't all of them, but I think this is the majority of the big ones. And if you've ever had federal funding before, these should look fairly familiar to you. So again, we guide you through the process. And as I'll go over on the next slide, that is kind of what we take pride in. So if you ever have any questions, if you need guidance or something, please reach out. We can definitely help you. The other one, again, I'm glad Chris kind of went over that, is I called it BABA, but I believe it is BABA. And Buy America, Build America. That is a new requirement, which we will be covering in the next workshop once kind of EPA releases their guidance. So definitely keep an eye out for that. And we will probably release some guidance documentation as we get a little more familiar with it as well. And finally, I want to mention this. So the Clean Water Needs Survey is currently going on. We are funded based on need, and how we get our annual appropriation is doing a survey to survey the need throughout the state. And I've got to say, we did the DWNSA, the Drinking Water Appropriation Survey, last year, and it was a resounding success to us. Now, obviously, the results have not come in yet, but just based on the response, and we just really want to send a heartfelt appreciation to everyone who responded, everyone who helped us. And the same with the Clean Watershed Needs Survey. We appreciate all the effort you guys put into that. We have a third-party contractor, Rural Water, doing that for us. So please, if they reach out to you, that helps us all. It gives us more appropriation. It gives us a chance to give more principal forgiveness, that sort of thing. So please, if they contact you and you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to help with that as well. And finally, why come to the SRF? And as I've mentioned multiple times, we really take pride in formulating guidance and helping you and being upfront, no hidden fees. I tell you, when we go to close a loan, we give you the exact payment schedule, to the penny. There's no hidden fees, one-time closing fee, which no upfront closing cost, that's amortized over the 20 years. And then We also include no capital interest options and multiple capital interest options. So if that's something you're interested in, definitely talk to us. We can be flexible as that. And then, as I've said multiple times, flexibility. So we can work well with other programs for the most part. State funds, the Community Development Block Grant through ADECA, the Delta Regional Authority, any of those can kind of go hand in hand with our funds. Now, as you'll hear from USDA, they also offer a few federal programs. That one's a little more iffy just because federal dollars with federal dollars, but reach out to us with whatever your scenario is, and we'll reach out to EPA. EPA is always helpful and willing to kind of go through scenarios with us. So please, we'd be happy to do that legwork for you, whether it works out or not. And again, contact us constantly. There will be no problems. Just let us know what's going on, update us, and we'll be happy to do what we can. And then, as I mentioned, with the nature of the revolving fund, every penny you pay back to us goes right back to the state. So you are investing in the state of Alabama every time you come to SRF. And that's all I've got. And I'm sad to report I am transitioning out of the state revolving fund. I am transferring within the department, but I'm still kind of handling the day-to-day stuff right now until my replacement is found. But Mr. SB, my boss, as well as the SRF section in general, can answer any questions. And if anybody has my contact information, from previous encounters, please contact me. Okay, that is not a big deal at all.
Thank you, Eric, for that presentation. As a reminder, if you have questions for Eric, you can leave a comment below and someone from our office will reach out to assist you. Finally, I'd like to welcome Ivory Gordon Jr. and Alan Boyd from the Alabama Office of Rural Development for the United States Department of Agriculture. Take it away, gentlemen.
Thank you, Congresswoman Sewell, for inviting the USDA to your virtual water and wastewater and infrastructure grant program. We're excited to be here. Thanks again. My name is Ivory Gordon. I'm the USDA State Director for the state of Alabama. And certainly we see that there's a tremendous need for USDA programs to help rural community with the programs that USDA offers. Also with our partners, the EPA and ADM. Certainly we're excited about the opportunities to resolve a lot of problem issues in our state. Thanks again for all of the support. Again here, the USDA is a lead federal agency that is created to help rural communities grow and prosper. And during that process, we increase economic development and improve the quality of life in rural places and rural small towns. And we provide loans and grants and technical assistance to build rehab critical infrastructure for public bodies, towns, water systems, water authorities. And the USDA offers over 40 programs that will be able to support our rural communities. So we're excited. We have programs in telecommunication programs. We have electrical programs. We have the community facilities program. We have the water and environmental programs in which our program director, Mr. Alan Bowen, will cover in full details. We have the business and cooperative programs. We have the single family housing. We also have the multifamily housing programs. So certainly all our programs, we want them to be well utilized to help our rural communities. We can help with broadband, hospitals, healthcare, business, education. And it is our goal to strengthen the capacity of our rural communities and work with our communities to increase the economic opportunities for rural Alabamians and do the things for America. We must improve the quality of life across rural Alabama and help our constituents, work with our needy communities. And we stand ready to be here and be a partner of prosperity for rural America. We stand here ready to serve, and we thank you for all of your great efforts that you put forward in trying to help our rural communities. Together we're going to work, and America is going to prosper. Thank you again, Congresswoman, and your staff for all the service that you render to us. Again, I will defer to our program director, Mr. Alan Bowen.
Thank you, Congresswoman Sewell, for giving us the opportunity to present our programs and that we have that are available to help rural Alabamians have safe, clean drinking water and sanitary sewer at a reasonable rate. And thank you, Mr. Gordon, for that introduction. As Mr. Gordon said, my name is Alan Bowen. I'm the Community Programs Director, which encompasses water and environmental programs along with the Community Facility Program. Mr. Gordon covered the more than 40 programs we have, so I'm going to move straight into the water and environmental programs. USDA rural development programs are available to help rural water and wastewater utilities. We do water and wastewater disposable loans and grants. We do water and wastewater disposable loan guarantees. We will talk about that. We have what we call a PPG, which is a pre-development planning grant. We have search grants. We have the Emergency Community Water Assistance Grant, we call ECWAG. We have guaranteed loans, and we have the Rural Decentralized Water System Grant Program. We finance water and wastewater systems in rural Alabama, and we'll get down to how we describe rural Alabama shortly. The applicants that we work with are public bodies, nonprofits, and recognized Native American tribes. Those are federally recognized tribes, and the only one we have in Alabama is the Porch Band of Creek Indians. We can build, repair, extend, and improve public water systems and wastewater collection and treatment systems and related costs. Rural areas or cities and towns with populations of up to 10,000 is our service numbers, and in rural areas there's not a population limit. In other words, if you have a county that does not have a municipality that is 10,000 or greater, but you have a population within the county of 30,000, you're eligible because you do not have a municipality with 10,000 or greater in it, and we could provide funding for that water entity or sewer entity. Interest rates are set quarterly. Terms of our loans can be up to 40 years, and applications are taken year-round. As I mentioned earlier, our interest rates are effective or take effect for a quarter, and the rates I have here are from January 1 through March 31st, which is the first quarter of the calendar year. They changed. While we were doing the presentations earlier, these rates have changed, and I will send out an update on those. But the poverty rate this quarter, January through March, is 1.25%. To be eligible for that, you must be a poverty community based on the median household income in relationship to the state non-metropolitan median household income, and you must be resolving a health or sanitary issue. The intermediate rate is currently 1.75. That's the most commonly used rate that we have. And then the market rate is 2.125. And again, the term of the loans can be up to 40 years. We can provide loan guarantees to lenders. What determines if a loan should be guaranteed? If you're not quite eligible for our services, in other words, if you could get credit elsewhere with the bank, but the bank's not going to give you exactly the best rate and terms, we can provide the bank with a guarantee. We also can go into communities that have populations up to 50,000 or less, which is a big advantage for the guaranteed loan program. We can go up to 80% of a guarantee to the lender, which makes lenders feel all warm and fuzzy sometimes. And again, the applications for our guaranteed loans are taken year-round. I mentioned the pre-development planning grant, or the PPG. That grant is available for the lower end of the income and population size scale, because you don't have the money to come out of your pocket and say pay an engineering firm to do what we call a preliminary engineering report to determine what exactly are your needs. What do we need to do in our community to help our citizens? That PPG is there to assist for paying costs associated with the development of a completed application for a proposed project. The median household income in the area served must be below the current poverty line, or 80%, which is $33,882 of the state non-metropolitan median household income, which is $42,352. So if your median household income is below $33,882, then certainly you qualify on that level. You must document that you do not have resources to pay the pre-development expenses. In other words, if you're going to have to spend $75,000 to get an engineer firm to come in and do your plan for you, but you got a CD of $1 million sitting in the bank, you're not eligible. This is to help those smaller communities that just really don't have the resources to pay an engineering firm to do this job for them. Grants will be limited on projects the agency expects to fund soon after the application, and the PPG costs are those necessary expenses to be incurred to develop a completed application and are limited to eligible grant purposes. The state director is authorized to make a PPG up to $30,000 or 75% of the project cost, whichever is less. In other words, the applicant was going to have to come up with 25% of that cost. The 25% not provided by the PPG must be from the applicant's own resources or other sources, and the grant does not have to be repaid. The other grant we talked about was the SEARCH grant, and that stands for Special Evaluation Assistance for Rural Communities and Household Grant. All the requirements are the same as the PPG we previously discussed, but the SEARCH grant is limited to financially distressed communities and rural areas with populations of 2,500 or fewer with water and wastewater, and it can cover up to 100% of the cost to be funded not to exceed $30,000. So the PPG is doesn't have a population limit, but other than the 10,000, but it does have a median household income limit, whereas the SEARCH grant is for those 2,500 population communities, and it does provide up to $30,000, which could be 100% of the cost. There would be no match. We talked about what I call the ECWAG. We had several of these in process. If you remember back, I believe it was last winter, we had some really cold weather over in west and northwest Alabama, and actually some pipes, not on private property, but the infrastructure pipes that actually transmit the water out to down the county roads and get them to the homes. Some of those pipes burst. Some pipes and pumps and tanks burst, and it drained all the water out of the system. And they needed to have it fixed quickly. It wasn't time for an application to be filed and processed, and getting a loan, to make all those changes. So we have this emergency grant, and what it covers is droughts and floods, earthquakes, tornadoes, hurricanes, disease outbreaks, chemical spills, leaks, or seepage. A federal declaration disaster is not required. You must submit the application within 6 months of the event. What you do is you submit the application to us, which is an abbreviated application, and we will have a lot of conversation with you prior to that application, being ready to submit. And you're going to know when you submit it pretty much if you're going to qualify for it. We want you to be able to go out there, make the arrangements necessary to make the repairs. get it fixed, because people need water, people need sewer, and they need it. If you've ever been without water, when your water doesn't come on at the house when you turn it on, 15 minutes is a long time if you need it. So we try to get it done pretty quickly. But there's 2 levels of coverage on the ECWAG. One is the water transmission line grant. So those are up to $150,000 to construct water line extensions, repair breaks or leaks in existing water distribution lines, and address related maintenance necessary to replenish the water supply. Again, we had some communities in West Alabama where those transmissions line burst. They need to be fixed. We talked to them on the phone or in person in some cases. We got the information we needed to make a decision, made the decision, told them to go ahead and get the work done, get the water back flowing in the pipes, and get to where when the customer turned the faucet on, water came out. The next level of coverage is the water source grants up to $1 million to construct a water source intake or a treatment facility. An example I will give you is there was a surface water intake up in northwest Alabama. A tornado come through. A backup fuel tank, storage tank, was blown into the river where the water was being taken out of. It was blown into the river at the point of pickup, so that any water that was picked up and brought into the system contained diesel fuel. Well, that's not very safe. And so they contacted us. We got some documentation we needed, and they needed to move that intake line upstream, away from the diesel fuel and away from potential flow downstream. And whatever the cost was, I forget, but whatever that cost was, we told them we would reimburse them for that. Okay. This program, Congresswoman Sewell, I know is dear to your heart, because you're the one who pushed and authored it and helped get it done. And we have talked many times about this, but it is the USDA Rural Decentralized Water System Grant Program. That's a mouthful. But basically, this program helps qualify nonprofits and tribes to create a revolving fund to increase access to clean, reliable water and septic systems for households for eligible areas. This is for people who are not on any system. I say system, water system, or a sewer system. This is for the rural people out there where there's not a septic line running down the road. You flush the toilet, or you turn on the washing machine and the water runs out across the yard through a pipe and goes into a collection system pipe and goes on to a treatment facility. This is for those people who septic tanks are not an option for whatever reason. Maybe they don't. The soil will not allow a septic tank to function properly, or the cost of putting a septic tank in on site to function properly is prohibitive. I have seen mound systems where people had to put $15,000 to $25,000 into the system just to be able to flush a toilet. Well, there's not many people in Alabama who can afford to spend $25,000 on a septic tank system to work. But how this program works, the applicant would be a nonprofit, for example, and they would apply for this loan or grant, and the money would be given to them if they were to be, the awardee, and then they would go out into the community and with a devised program to qualify and take applications to put people on this system, and they would be a charge based on the income of the individuals, and as the money came in, it would revolve and continue to grow. The nonprofit's got to have the expertise and the experience to promote the safe and productive use of individually owned household water well systems or sewer systems. They must have the legal authority to act as a lender. They must have sufficient expertise and experience in lending activities and the financial and technical management capacity to comply with relevant federal and state laws and regulations. So it's just not a case where somebody can form a nonprofit and say, I think I want to start doing this. We're going to ask you to submit information to us to document that you have the expertise, the authority to do all of these things. The grant funds may be used to help a nonprofit create a revolving loan fund for eligible individuals who own or occupy a home in an eligible rural area. The funds may be used to construct, refurbish, or service individually owned household water wells and septic systems. The term of the loans include 1% fixed rate, 20-year maximum term, and a $15,000 maximum loan per household. What is an eligible area? Rural areas and towns with populations of 50,000 or less. And we can check the eligibility by the addresses. Tribal lands in rural areas. Are matching funds required for the grant? Yes, the nonprofit must contribute at least 10%. Matching funds may be from a nonprofit applicant or a third party, or matching funds from may be, but not from another source, but may not be in kind services. In other words, you can't say, well, we're going to have a contractor and he's going to donate his time free and his labor free to dig the hole for the septic system that we put in. That's the contribution must be in the form of cash. Okay. Application process. We have been doing RD Apply, which is our intake system now for about 5 years. It has evolved and it is very effective. It speeds up our process very quickly. You as the applicant, and most of the time the person or the entity filling out the application is your engineer to a great extent. And they go online, log in, start filling it out. And when you're done, you push a button and it says you're done. It sends it to us. We review it. If you have given us everything we've asked for to have a completed application, we push another button and it jumps into our platform where we do the underwriting to determine if you're eligible and on many levels. It saves a lot of time. RD staff and applicants participate in the conference once application is started, and RD Apply to ensure application is correct the first time. We will work with you as you develop this application to ensure that it gets done properly the first time. Having to go back and forth is an expensive process for us and for you. It allows RD staff to start underwriting early in the process, and it results in a faster, more efficient process. EPER stands for Electronic Preliminary Engineering Report. This is, when I first started with the agency, we got preliminary engineering reports shipped to us in the mail, and they came in boxes, big boxes, and they were cumbersome, expensive to ship, and cumbersome to store. So we have now developed in conjunction with RD Apply, where the engineer, the consulting engineer that you hire to help you with your project, can go online and securely in an online platform develop and submit the preliminary engineer report to us. You don't have to stick $100 worth of stamps on it or call FedEx to come pick it up. It comes over the internet, as we say. It can be downloaded into CPAP, which is our underwriting platform. It allows for better communication and interaction between our staff and our applicant and the project engineer. FY22 funding. If you're contemplating upgrades, expansions, and funding needs, get your application in as soon as possible. Right now, we are operating under a continuing resolution. We hope to have a budget or a permanent continuing resolution that will allow us to have access to all the funds we normally get here in Alabama. We typically get about $30 to $35 million in loan money and probably somewhere around $10 million in grant funds on an average year. We did not and have not, and I don't think we will be receiving any funds unless something changes with new acts in the future from the money that EPA and the State Revolving Loan Fund talked about previously. I will say that we are all on the same team. We do not compete with one another. We have been working with the State Revolving Loan Fund, EPA, and ADM in identifying where the needs are. I do not believe that with all the funds that we have coming into Alabama through EPA, ADM, State Revolving Loan Fund, USDA, or any other source, we do not have enough funds to provide for all the needs in Alabama. So we need to make sure, and we need to work as a team, and we communicate with one another to develop plans that will make the best use of the funds we have to touch and help as many people in rural Alabama as possible. Everybody deserves to have safe, clean drinking water, sanitary sewer at a rate they can afford. They do not need to be having to decide, do I buy my medicine, do I buy food, or do I pay for water and sewer? That's just inexcusable. And in Alabama, believe it or not, we still have places in rural Alabama where children on a rainy day, when they walk from the house to the school bus, they're walking in human waste that has seeped out of non-working septic systems into the yard. So we've got to work together, and I do appreciate EPA, ADM, and the State Revolving Loan Fund allowing us to work with them along with some other organizations. And I'll go over those. We look to other sources of funding to supplement funding needs, particularly grant funds. The more people involved, the merrier, really. Other sources of funds and partners that we work with regularly is the State Revolving Loan Fund, the Community Development Block Grants, Alabama Rural Water, Appalachia Regional Planning Council, Delta Regional Authority, EPA, EDA. We have relationships with those agencies. They have relationships with us. This is just a slide to let you know that we have the community facility program. A lot of times in rural areas, you have people who wear multiple hats. We have a community facility program that we can provide essential community facilities such as public safety, government buildings, different type structures for senior citizens, and roads, lighting, curbs, police cars, fire trucks, volunteer fire departments, whatever. We do have that program. Community facilities program covers that. And like I said, reason I stuck this in here is because many times the people who work for the cities or the water authorities or the water districts also are volunteer firemen or work with the senior citizens in rural Alabama. To start an application, I have a map here. As you can see, we have it color coded. We have our, let's see if I can move it up, just move it a little bit up. That's all right. You see area 1 is the Huntsville area, and you can go over here and see the designated area, the phone number and the contact information. Same thing with area 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. I do not have my contact information over here. I overlooked that. I will give that to you now and write it down. And certainly these ladies and gentlemen that work in these 8 area offices, that's where the rubber meets the road. I work in the ivory tower, so to speak. But these ladies and gentlemen are going to do the work. So they're good at their job. Contact them if you live in a county that's serviced by their area office. But my contact information is Alan Bowen. It'll be my email address will be allen.bowen@usda.gov. My telephone number is going to be 334-322-4147. I work in the state office in Montgomery on Carmichael, and just give me a call. If you can't get up with somebody, you call me. We'll get you up with whoever you need to get up with. I do appreciate the opportunity to speak. Here's our website. Here's a Twitter, whatever that is. I hear it. I've never been there. Now I'm telling my age, aren't I? And of course, we're here to helping improve the economy and the quality of life in rural America, and most specifically rural Alabama. That is it. I thank you for your time. I appreciate the opportunity to serve the people of Alabama. And again, our goal and our mission is to make sure that everybody in Alabama has safe, clean drinking water, sanitary sewer at a reasonable rate. Thank you very much.
Thank you both so much for that very informative presentation. In closing, I would like to thank each of my guests for taking the time to present today about the available water infrastructure funding and how local municipalities and localities can apply for this historic funding. I truly believe that this information will help our cities and county governments better serve the residents of Alabama's 7th Congressional District. If any of you have any further questions or would like to download this virtual workshop, please visit my website at sewell.house.gov and reach out to our grants coordinator, Yolanda Clayton, at 205-254-1960 or by email at yolanda.clayton@mail.house.gov. As always, it is a pleasure for me and my office to serve you, Alabama's 7th Congressional District. Look forward to the next virtual grants workshop. Thank you, and stay tuned.